Where were you born?
I was born in Michigan,
Ooh.
specifically Saginaw General Hospital.
That's like the hand.
Yeah, that's the hand.
People are like, I'm from Michigan,
Yep.
and then they say,
Right here.
You're right here.
Right here. See that? Right here.
That's where she's
right
from.
on the border of Indiana
Okay.
and Michigan.
Phil, for you.
Little tiny town. If you were to drive all the way from Detroit and Chicago, it's like pretty much dead center on the way.
Between Detroit and Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So those were your big cities that were closest?
So I grew up in a town of 2,000 people. So
small town.
Yeah, super small. And so the nearest town next door is, I don't even know what that was. We were in between two slightly bigger towns, but not much. But the largest town was probably a couple 100,000 people. It's Kalamazoo.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. I think that's where Derek Jeter was from, I think.
Okay.
So
shout out Derek Jeter.
Yeah. But then, I would say the next big city beyond that would be Grand Rapids if you're on the west side,
okay.
or Detroit on the east side.
What kind of family did you get born into? Were there other siblings already there?
Yeah, it was a very blended family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
what number were you?
I was second to last, so there's 5 of us.
Ooh,
yeah, 5 of us total. Mm-hmm.
And you weren't the baby.
I wasn't the baby.
But your parents were probably done being parents by then, huh? I mean,
so my family is kind of complicated.
Okay.
So I can give you how it breaks down. It's a little bit complicated. So my mom had my brother, my second oldest brother, when she was 18,
mm-hmm.
and his father wasn't in the picture. My mom then had her first husband,
mm-hmm.
and at the time, he had a wife previously, and so they were married and they had a child together. And my mom married her first husband. She adopted my oldest brother,
mm-hmm.
and so they were divorced. When she was married to her first husband, they had my sister.
Okay.
So
now it's 3 kids.
3, yeah. And then when she divorced her first husband, she had 3 kids at this point.
Uh-huh.
My 2 older brothers, and then my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And then she married my dad, and they had my brother and I.
Yeah.
My younger brother. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it was a blended family.
Yeah, it is a blended family. Was everybody at the house a bunch, or were people going to different parents and different places, different households?
So what I would say is, there was about 4 to 5 years between each of us siblings.
Okay.
So when my oldest brother was in the house, he was much older. So my early memories were him almost going off to college, so I remember that. And then my second oldest brother, shortly after, I definitely remember going to his high school. He was in a bunch of sports. I remember to go in all of his high school activities and stuff as a kid. And then my sister, she was my big sister. We did a lot of stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I, so we were all around. I remember, I think the biggest memories that I have were always our family Christmas was huge. We had a lot of togetherness in that space of, but certainly my other siblings had, they had their dad and stepdad that they would visit. So people were kind of going off into different homes and stuff. But
what was it like being in a house like that as a kiddo?
I remember it was fun. It was never you were never really alone. There was always people around. It was a very busy household. My dad, so I grew up having in the summers, just living in a bathing suit. We had a pool, playing with my siblings, going to a lot of sporting events, doing a lot of sports as a kid. It was nice,
mm-hmm. Small town.
Yeah, it was a very small town.
Everybody knew everybody?
Definitely that type of situation. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if y'all rolling 5 deep with kids, you probably you're a crew.
Yeah, no, we definitely you're a family of 7, so
everybody knew. Yeah. Oh, you were so and so's sister. You were
definitely had we had a van.
You had a van.
Yeah, we had a van, and I remember loving that van because it was just fun. You could pull out the seat, we could all hang out in the back, and I think we had a TV, which was a big deal. So we'd go on road trips and stuff and travel. Yeah. was
I
fun.
imagine that would feel really safe, having your
Did.
own like kind of family gang.
Yeah, I think it did. Definitely.
Yeah. So you,
I think the other thing that I'll say is that, my two older brothers, I don't think I really formed as close of relationships with them until I was older,
yeah.
so
Well, because y'all were
yeah.
so
Yeah,
different in age.
there was such an age gap, so
Yeah. It's like, how do you
that's one.
relate as a 18-year-old to a 5-year-old?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely remember, like, I have memories of it, but not as many memories. I definitely remember being young when my oldest brother went off to college and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so those are early memories, and then having much more established memories of, like, with my sister and my younger brother, because we were much closer in age at that point. Like, my two older brothers were going off to college and stuff as I grew up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How did your folks navigate the complexities of a blended family?
What I'll say is it was like we didn't really distinguish. I mean, I never felt, and I would say that this is where, like, my personal experience of growing up like that was, like, they were just my siblings. I didn't think of them in any other way. I mean, I knew
Yeah.
that, like, my sister had a biological dad, and, like, I knew that they had biological parents that I didn't know. What I would say too is that because it was such a small town, like, our families knew each other. Like, the families all
Oh,
knew
so
each
their
other.
dads
Yeah.
lived in that town.
Yeah, well, the neighboring town. So, like,
Okay.
everyone kind of knew each other, and so, there was that sense of, like, I don't know, I don't remember there being friction or anything. It was just like they would go and they would have their weekends, and, it was certainly my experience with it was, it was supportive. It was supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, certainly it had its challenges and stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes I think of therapists or people that go into a healing practice as someone that starts with a desire to heal themselves.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that true for you?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely. And I think a lot of that came up when I became a parent myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we did, I think you go through that process where you start to maybe re-experience things from your childhood, or start to maybe identify, like, certain behaviors that, like, oh, okay, this is like my mom, or I'm showing you, like, I remember this, and, like, that. I don't know if there were certain things that I was like, that was how I grew up, but I would like it to look different with
Is
my kids.
there a wound from those attachments that you feel comfortable talking about that led to some of that stuff?
So, I mean, what
Maybe
I
not a
would
wound, but
say,
like a dynamic that.
yeah, I mean, what I'd say is I was really close with my dad. I
Mm-hmm.
still am. My dad is still alive. My mom passed away when I was 30. I was 35 when she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So, colon cancer. And my relationship with my mom growing up was really challenging. We always had this dynamic where we would kind of be battling each other. And I remember very specifically, she'd always be like, you always have to have the last word. I always had to push back.
You
And
did.
So, yeah, I definitely pushed back. I was definitely the more emotional child. I think anybody in my family would say, like, I was really sensitive, and probably, maybe, I don't know, I wasn't the middle child, but I was maybe closer to that middle child where I probably absorbed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I was more emotional in maybe a family dynamic where emotion wasn't really expressed.
They
It
didn't
wasn't
express
it
emotions
wasn't
much?
as encouraged. Like, your expression of emotion was, I mean, we didn't talk a lot about emotions.
You didn't. Well,
Yeah,
that was just
so
the time. I don't think
yeah,
people
but I
talked about
but
emotions
I
back
don't
then.
talk about it in that way of, like, I don't think about it. I think about the generation in which my
Yeah.
parents grew up. And I relate a lot in my clinical practice to, like, Midwestern culture is very much like that. It's kind of like pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Stoic,
And it's very
maybe.
kind of stoic. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I was more emotional. And so I had a dynamic with my mom where I would kind of push boundaries and I would act out a little bit, especially as I got older. When my parents got divorced, and I think I was like 14.
Okay.
Yeah. And
How
so,
did your mom handle that boundary
well,
pushing?
I mean,
Would she de-escalate or escalate?
I mean, oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Could you co-regulate with her when you were feeling
No,
intense emotions?
definitely. And I would say that that's probably like where most of and I think I did have that ability with my dad. Like we spent a lot of time together. We did a
Mhm.
lot of things and we genuinely just like, we just had a lot in common. I mean, I think he kind of treated me like a firstborn son, maybe in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Like
Hmm.
I grew up just kind of doing all the things. It wasn't gender specific, right? I would just do all the things that he was interested in and I would
What would
just
you
go,
do? Oh yeah, you were saying the
yeah, like I
photography
just
and all
like
the different things.
yeah, just all these things that and I just kind of go along for the ride, but you know, I spent a lot of time with my dad. I think we've always kind of had the ability to just sort of like get each other. We just enjoyed being around each other and had a lot in common. I was always like
Hmm.
adventurous with him. But my relationship with my mom, you know, she worked hard. She had a really difficult childhood growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there was a lot of maybe stress and anxiety that I think she carried with her throughout her life. And I think when I think about how like your nervous system is regulated in childhood, I grew up in a house where there probably was a lot of I don't know, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot happening and we all had our individual experiences but definitely I kind of experienced my mom's maybe more anxious energy.
I was
She
thinking of a car
yeah.
that kind of idles high,
Yeah,
like has
she
a
definitely
high
ran.
idle.
And anybody that knew my mom kind of identified her in that way as she just like burned it at both ends of the night.
Mm.
So she and that for her looked like working. You know, she kind of
What
threw
kind of job
herself.
she do?
So my dad owned a business. My family, my grandfather had a manufacturing business.
Manufacturing?
And he manufactured trailer hitches.
Okay.
And so I have just very early memories of my grandpa. He died when I was 5, but when he passed away, my dad and my uncle inherited the family business. And
Trailer
so,
hitch business.
yeah. So, um, I lost my train of thought.
Did your mom work at the
Oh yeah.
business too?
So at some point, where I was going with that. So at some point, when my mom and dad were married, my dad and my mom were like, she was vice president, my dad was president. So
Okay.
there was a lot of memories too of like going to, we called it the shop, and we would just play office. My mom would be working, my sister and I'd be playing secretary on the phone. We had so much fun, you know? Like
Mm.
I definitely have memories of doing that, spending a lot of time like with my parents while they were working.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun for me. And then as I got older, you know, that was my first job, or I'd like help out with whatever administrative stuff. And I think it's like all of us worked at some point with my dad's family business. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so my mom was very invested at one point and she had a pretty pivotal role. I think she was, but then, you know, when my father and her divorced, yeah, it looked different. I'm trying to think. She did a bunch of different stuff, but she went on and worked for the local paper.
She
She
couldn't
did a
work
lot
there
of
anymore when
like
they got divorced, huh?